What's up, everybody? All right, this video is for a client. After a private session, it's sort of like our wrap-up video. There is a lot of information in there that I wanted to post for anybody that's just starting with the pentatonic, able to play up and down the scale, not really sure how to use it. Really good information here. So it is set up like I'm directly addressing somebody after a lesson, but check it out, see if you like it.
Cool. All right. So Jonathan, with the pentatonic scale and sort of riffing around to a backing track, there's a couple things that we're gonna do where, like, if it starts to feel, I don't want to say daunting, but if it starts to get, I guess, like exceedingly boring, there's a couple factors that we always miss when we start doing this stuff, which sort of just makes it sound monotonous. I guess that's really the word I'm looking for. If it's just starting to get monotonous, these were the things that we're working on today. So start musically, right? If I have my my A minor pentatonic, right? My A's, the root note of that scale is 5th fret of my low E string, 7th fret my D string, and 5th fret my high E string. Those are my A's, right there in my A minor bar chord. So what we were saying is, anytime that I land on one of those notes, the last note of a phrase, it's going to sound very settled. So I was saying that, if we have that backing track, right, and a lot of people will they'll keep going back to those root notes because it's the easiest thing for us to hear. We can tell it sounds settled. It sounds, and it has a very sweet sound, it's like a very, very close sound. The other notes, the tension notes, are the ones that are a little bit more difficult for us to hear, right? We can really hear that root note. So what we want to do, the best way to visualize this within the scale is we don't want to be giving that root note away. If we give it away too much, it diminishes the value of that root note. And that's like one of the most important, or the most important note of the scale, as far as like the name of the scale and the root note of the scale. So we don't want to diminish its value, but we need to make it wanted. And the analogy I always go with is close, but not close enough. So the notes that are behind and ahead in the scale are close but close enough, or the tension notes. Okay, so now it's a little easy up here because we're not going below this the first note, the root note of the scale, on the 6th string. So just the 8th fret above it, that's my tension note. Okay, so if I go here, the next root note, 7th fret of my D string, the note before it in the scale, the 5th fret of the D string, it's my root note again, and then the next note in the scale, the 5th fret of the G string, those two notes are my tension notes. So if I play a phrase and I land on one of those and hold it out, it gives us a little tension, and then I can do the same exact thing and just resolve it. So you have one lick and give it a nice pause after, right? Let that settle a little bit, and then however you want to do it, and then another lick that ends on the root note. So that becomes our call and response. All right. Up here, if we go to the bottom two strings, the B and the E string down here, I have my root note, the 5th fret of my high E string. Right? The 8th fret is the next note in the scale. That'll be my tension note. That's my root note again, 5th fret of the E. So the note before it, the 5th fret of the B string, now becomes a tension note as well. Before the note, before the root note, after the root note, right? So tension is the 8th fret of the B string, 8th fret of the E string. So same deal. You can play a lick. Cool. Let that settle. That's tension. And then, right, we can even hear one of the examples was if I play that. Right, we definitely want that root note to come in. So just going back and forth, splitting up, getting really used to, like, okay, tension note, 8th fret, tension note is the 8th fret, root note is the 5th fret on the E string, and then these two strings, the G and the D, getting used to those, and then combining them, right? So just the phrases, let the phrases get more elaborate. You know what I mean? I'm doing a lot of, right? But a phrase, like if that's our, backing track, a phrase can still be, right? A bunch of notes, and then I'm ending 8th fret on the B string to give it tension. And then another phrase, right? Ending on the fifth fret of my high E string, my resolution, right? So mess around with that and start to develop your ear for it. And the other notes in the scale, we can still end a phrase there, right? 5th fret of my B string. It's just not going to give us tension or resolution, okay? But it's within the scale. In fact, some of the notes, that note in particular, is within the chord of my A minor. So mess around with that. Now, the other thing that is going to make it sound a little monotonous is, now that we're opening up the scale, honestly, is the rhythm that you're playing, note duration, so long notes and short notes, okay? Having a good mix of those two. We don't need to really talk about dynamics yet. So the rhythm and the note duration, and honestly, the order of the notes, okay? And the reason is, if we take each one of those three factors and we say, okay, I've got my note rhythm, and I'm just playing the scale, practicing the scale, each one of those notes is the same. It's the same rhythm over and over, right? Ba, 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 ba. The duration of the note is all the same, right? Nothing longer, nothing shorter, nothing cut off, right? So that ends up being the same and monotonous. And then the direction is the same. Down, right? And then back. So if we mix some of those up, right? Long, short, the rhythm, if I'm on a strong beat, like if I have my 1, 2, 3, 4, I don't want to just stay 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4 on those notes, right? Even though I'm playing a little bit longer and a little bit shorter, but I can mix it up playing in between. It's hard, but 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, and 3, 4, right? And I just start to develop a little bit more rhythmic phrases, and I can do it without moving in the scale. And I know this is, Jonathan, I know this is a lot. I'm throwing a lot at you. So just go through this video and stop on any one of these things, because all of this information is stuff that we're gonna continue. You know what I mean? So these like ideas, it's just like you start and then there's another layer and another layer and another layer. So I just want to give you enough. And this is another video that you can keep going back to, but to give you enough where it will be endless, but like endless sort of like for years. You know what I mean? Because you just sort of get better at it. It's just like that sort of creative layer. But if I just have, dot, 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 that's very boring. Dot, 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 that's very boring. But dot, 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 dot. Okay. All right, I'm only using those three notes, but that rhythm is what was making it interesting, and I will have students sort of do that, just sort of tap out a rhythm. Cool. And that's going to help. I'd love to get that rhythmic stuff in there. And then lastly, and this is, I don't want to say like the least important, but for whatever reason, everybody, and I totally remember doing this because I remember the specific conversation that my teacher was having with me when I was getting into this stuff was, it's like, oh, why don't we like to play the same note over and over? And that's the same with this. If I'm running up and down the scale, cool, right? But I'm just continually jumping to the next note, right? And jumping backwards or forward, whichever way. The scale is moving, right? It's very rarely will somebody just decide to do like, sounds pretty cool, right? Especially with the rhythm, and it's just that first note, 8th fret of the bottom E string, however many times, and then ending it on the 5. So don't be afraid of that, and that'll get us away from going, you know, up the scale and then back down the scale. So all the things to work on. This is a video that we can continue to go back on. I wanted to give you this just so that you had this to work on, because that backing track and the theory is going to be something that we're really going to get into, just so you don't put that backing track on and within 5 minutes you're like, I don't know what to do.